Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2025 general election in the United States under the second term of Donald J. Trump. So, every year in the United States, there is an election somewhere in the country. Uh, every 4 years, there's a presidential election. In years like 2020, 2024, 2028, in 2021, 2025, 2029, there is the New Jersey and Virginia gubernatorial elections, and there are a bunch of mayoral elections and special elections. So every year there's an election. There is the ability to have a referendum on the president of the United States, fairly or not. So I thought I would cover the general election of 2025. It's been full of twists and turns, no matter how you look at it this year, politically speaking. In Canada, you had the Liberal Party under Mark Carney after he replaced Justin Trudeau win the election, but it is a minority government. So, unfortunately for Mr. Carney, he is beatable. If all the parties gang up on him, they could take him down. Um, so, then you had Australia where the Labour Party won and the Liberal leader there lost his seat, just like in Canada. Um, so, in Virginia, former U.S. Representative Abigail Spanberger defeated incumbent Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears by a landslide. So far, this is it's just brutal. Some wondered if Jay Jones was going to sink the Democrats, but apparently not. So far, Spanberger is almost matching Terry McAuliffe's 2021 numbers. All she has to do really is just when all the votes are in, she'll probably beat Glenn Youngkin's margin. She maybe, depending on turnout, she could have the most votes of any Virginia governor. Who knows? But we'll know the final numbers when that's over with. So Virginia will no longer be in the list of states that never had a female governor. In the race for lieutenant governor, Democratic State Senator Ghazala Hashimi, I probably butchered that, defeated Republican radio host John Reed. It's not particularly close. She looked like she was vulnerable near the end, but looks like reports of her political demise were premature. The Attorney General election is too close to call. Democratic state senator, former state delegate and candidate for Attorney General in 2021, Jay Jones, is ahead of incumbent Republican Attorney General Jason Miyares. Jones is very controversial. He had stated that he had a conversation with Republican delegate Kerry Coyner about following the death of a former delegate. He made disparaging remarks against Republicans. He said, if these guys die before me, I will go to the funerals to piss on their graves. He said that former House Speaker, the then House Speaker, Todd Gilbert, saying that he would, put two in his head. 3 bullets, 3 people, 2 bullets, Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets two to the head. Spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew with the 2 of the worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. He then targeted Gilbert's children, wishing that they would die, and said that he and his wife were evil and breeding little fascists. If Jones is elected, the Democrats have lost any moral high ground when it comes to wishing people, like when people joke or even wish this kind of thing to happen on people. But then again, Republicans joked about Paul Pelosi being attacked with a claw hammer. So, it's just been an absolute disaster in politics, thanks to the degradation of any decency. So, anyway, so after that, Jay Jones is ahead, 84% of the vote in. It's not impossible for Miyares to pull it out, but imagine the backlash against President Trump is going to be so bad that you could lose your job to a guy that most people were expecting to be rejected. So then we look at Mikey Sherrill is crushing Jack. I think it's pronounced. Let me see how exactly it's pronounced. Chitterelli, Jack Chitterelli. He's being crushed. He's getting his butt handed to him by Mikey Sherrill. Um, so the New Jersey gubernatorial election. Um, so yeah, I just realized I was only sharing one tab. So Mikey Sherrill is the projected winner. She will defeat Republican uh, Jack Chitterelli. Chitterelli was the Republican nominee in 2021. Chitterelli was a state assemblyman from 2011 to 18. He ran for governor in 2017. So the backstory with him is he first ran for governor against the then Republican Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno. She was running to replace Chris Christie, who was about as popular as a migraine. Chitterelli lost by a landslide to Guadagno. Guadagno went on to lose to Phil Murphy. Turnout was pretty poor in 2021. Turnout increased a little bit, and Phil Murphy and Jack Chitterelli had better numbers than 2017. Chitterelli won the nomination in a landslide, carrying every single county. The fact he did this well was a huge surprise. New Jersey swung to the right by a bigger margin than Virginia, but still he lost. Then he ran a third time, and I don't expect him to run again because at this point, I think it's clear the Republicans are going to try to pick somebody else. Mikey Sherrill won with a very, very small minority of the vote. Chitterelli won his nomination by a huge margin. The race was close. The polls said it was likely Sherrill who was going to win, but Chitterelli, people were worried he could be underestimated, and Democrats were nervous about Virginia because you have a term limited Democratic governor who's, not the most popular, but you also have a Republican so that was going to weigh down Mikey Sherrill originally. But then you have a Republican president, Donald Trump, who's very unpopular, weighing down Jack Chitterelli. It was just a question of who had more baggage, who was more tied to an unpopular person. Donald Trump was the kiss of death for Jack Chitterelli by some margin. So ultimately, it's going to be Mikey Sherrill, who will be the second female governor of New Jersey. The Democrats will win a third term. Then you go down to Virginia. In 2013, actually, we'll go back to 2009. In 2009, you had the Democrats have been in power for 8 years. Now, since 1977, with the exception of 2013, the party opposite of the President of the United States has won the governor's race. In 1973, it was the last time that the party of the sitting president won the governor's race. So in 2009, the Democrats nominated Craig Deeds over Terry McAuliffe. Deeds is a state senator. McAuliffe is just a businessman who also was, friends of the Clintons. Despite winning the nomination easily, he would lose to Bob McDonnell, the then Attorney General, who resigned in order to run for governor. You don't have to, but he wanted to make sure that he got non-incumbency. To win without being an incumbent office holder. Bob McDonnell defeated him in a landslide. In fact, this was the most lopsided win of the 21st century. It's the first time since 1997 that a party won by double digits. And until 2021, this was the last time a Republican was elected governor. So in 2013, Terry McAuliffe decided he would run again. And thanks to it being a three-way race, he won with a minority of the vote, a plurality. He defeated the Republican Attorney General and the lieutenant and excuse me, the Libertarian candidate for governor. Um, it was a very close race, but the Attorney General's race was closer. Then in 2017, he could not run again because Virginia doesn't allow governors to run for consecutive terms. Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam defeated former RNC Chairman Ed Gillespie, who, despite being kind of an establishment moderate Republican, he was painted as a MAGA extremist. Donald Trump being unpopular and, the Charlottesville riots did not help Gillespie for, guilt by association. Northam defeated him by a huge margin. Then in 2020, but the problem for Northam was the Republicans held the legislature. The Senate was not up for election. The House of Delegates, the Democrats failed to flip. It was a 51-49 split. Then in 2019, the Democrats won both chambers of the legislature, and Northam abolished the death penalty and did various other things that Democrats want in their state governments. But the problem was, COVID, cost of living, Joe Biden winning the election in 2020 and being very unpopular in Virginia. But Donald Trump was also very unpopular in Virginia. So Democrats tied Youngkin to Trump. Republicans tied McAuliffe to Biden. And Youngkin, he accepted Trump's endorsement, but he was able to walk a fine line between getting the endorsement and showing he was not Trump's puppet. Youngkin defeated McAuliffe by a narrow margin. It was not exactly an upset, but it was more like, people wanted change. 8 years of Democrats in Virginia. The Republicans got the state House of Delegates, and they got the Lieutenant Governor's office and Attorney General's office by very close margins. That led to the rise of Winsome Sears. In 2023, the Democrats regained control of the House of Delegates, so Youngkin, who never had the state Senate, had to compromise with Democrats in the legislature in order to do anything. So then, as a consequence, he was kind of nervous about who his successor would be. So the Republicans nominated uncontested Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears. Several other candidates wanted to run but failed to qualify and or did not run. The Democrats did not hold a primary. Instead, they nominated unopposed former U.S. Representative Abigail Spanberger. That was weird how I pronounced it. So no one actually put these people in nomination. They just didn't have opponents. And initially, there was question of just by how much is Spanberger going to crush it. And she smashed it. At current count, she's leading by double digits. This will be the best showing for a Democrat since 1985. The Democrats, I think, they're going to win the state legislature, the House of Delegates in particular, which last I checked, nothing has been called, and there are more Republicans retiring than Democrats. So on the lieutenant governor level, Ghazala Hashini is elected by a fair margin in the Attorney General's office election. Jay Jones is still ahead. So then the big question is going to be, just by how much? Because I don't think it's going to be close whatsoever. I think it's more going to be just the Democrats crushing Republicans as a rebuke of Donald Trump. It's not going to be a particularly pleasant outcome. Then you have a ton of mayoral elections. And I'll cover whatever I can, but there's one election I really want to cover because of who the candidate is. It's in, if I can find it, it's in Jersey City, New Jersey. So this election is officially nonpartisan, interestingly enough. But, we all know that they're Democrats. These are Democrats running. because it doesn't. Okay, yeah. Well, I guess it's not officially nonpartisan, but the electoral system in Jersey City is simple. If you can get a simple majority of the vote, you win. If not, it's runoff time. So anyway, the turnout was very, very poor in 09. But the guy running, one of the main candidates, is former New Jersey Governor Jim McGreevey. He is the first openly gay person to serve as a state governor in American history. He resigned due to a sex scandal where he admitted he was gay and had engaged in an extramarital affair. He would resign from office. What's interesting is the guy he said he had the affair with denied that it happened. So almost 21 years after he resigned, he is a candidate for mayor of Jersey City. The polls have shown that he would likely advance to a runoff. So this race ain't going nowhere. But it looks like James Solomon, the counselor for Ward E, is going to be his main opponent. So the question then goes to who will win in a runoff? Because Jim McGreevey has all the endorsements, the governor, an ex-governor. The question then becomes, will those matter? Will those endorsements actually change anything at all? I'm going to go to the next screen. Then there is the mayoral election in Buffalo, New York. Buffalo is an interesting one because of what happened 4 years ago. So in 2021, how about I start like this? In 2005, Byron Brown was elected mayor of Buffalo. He was reelected in 2009, 2013, 2017. 2021 comes, he unexpectedly was defeated for renomination by Democratic Socialist India Walton. Walton was very much a critic. She harshly condemned his administration, and then she decided she would run against him. She defeated him in the primary. So what happened was, after that, the Brown administration decided that he would run for re-election anyway. The Working Families Party had supported Brown in 2005, 09, 13, 17. Walton got the Working Families Party nomination, but failed to formally accept it in time for the deadline. But she was supported by them, endorsed by them, and they raised money for her anyway. So in the general election, Brown was running a write-in campaign. And initially, people wondered, could he possibly win? But the poll suggested that if he mounted the campaign, he would likely beat her because nearly all Republicans were dropping out to support him because they didn't like the alternative. And he beat her by a landslide. So turnout was just a meekly 40%, but that was up from 15% in 2017 when he defeated a reform candidate with the nominations of the Democrats, Working Families, Independents, and Women's Equality parties, which is funny because we haven't heard from the Women's Equality Party for a while, and that's because they don't exist anymore, interestingly enough. So the party would dissolve in 2018. So then he resigned in 2024 to take a new job somewhere else. Well, let me make sure of that, because he resigned in 2024, ending 18 and a half years as mayor. Yeah, to take over as a CEO of a company. So now the Democrats and Republicans are sparring for who can be the next mayor. I haven't seen any polling on this, so but I think the Democrats are going to win because you know Buffalo, if they wanted to, they'd start voting Republican in big numbers to show that they're changing how they vote. Zohran Mamdani is the winner of the New York City mayoral general election. He is beating Andrew Cuomo by a healthy amount. Not the landslide the polls had predicted, but with 87% of the vote in, it's pretty safe to say Cuomo is done for politically. I think he is irrelevant after this. Cuomo ran as an independent technically, but he had created the party Fight and Deliver. He is a registered Democrat, and he lost. Sliwa is on a second ballot line called Protect Animals. The Working Families Party endorsed Mamdani. New York City law changed so that you can't have multiple party ballots. You can have one extra, like you can appear on two lines, but not. They used to have like where you could have a list of parties backing you. Now you can only have two. One is the main party, and the other is like you know, just like you can build small coalitions, but nothing where you have like 50 parties backing you. Anyway, Mamdani crushed it. The polls had shown that he was ahead by double digits, sometimes by like 16 points, sometimes even by 30 if it was him versus just Sliwa. But I think a ton of Republicans today defected from Sliwa to support Cuomo unenthusiastically, but I don't think it matters anyway because uh, Cuomo's a prick. I'm just gonna say it. He kills grannies, smacks fannies, as Sliwa puts it. Undercounted nursing home deaths to make himself look better than Trump. He's a predator and he's a sleazy guy. He treats people like dirt. Mamdani's ideas don't work. He wants to municipalize grocery stores, which is an absurd idea because maybe when the government has when the government has solved all the crime and can balance a budget, maybe they can look into the idea of municipalization of grocery stores and free buses. Someone's paying for it. He's just not telling you who. Anyway, after that, there is the Boston mayoral election. So Michelle Wu was elected in 2021. Marty J. Walsh was Biden's labor secretary. He resigned to take the job. Michelle Wu was a city council member. She ran for the office. It was like a four-way race. What happened was she defeated the acting mayor, Kim Janey. Michelle Wu was president of the council for 2 years. It was a pretty hotly contested election, but in the primary, she and Anissa Asabi George defeated a bunch of other candidates, including the acting incumbent, to go to the general election. Ultimately, it was a landslide, and Wu was elected by a large margin to be the next mayor. She took office early because Walsh had resigned to become the labor secretary. Wu pissed off some people by having a party for elected politicians of color. In the primary, she crushed it with over 70% of the vote. In the general election, she is virtually unopposed because Josh Kraft dropped out, which I think is funny because it's like he will not be on the general election ballot. It's the first time under this current system that a candidate withdrew after advancing to the general election. So this is the first time, 1951 was the first time they used nonpartisan preliminary elections preceding its general elections, which is how they do it in some countries where what partisan or not. Anyway, my hometown uses that method. So Michelle Wu will be reelected mayor of Boston, Massachusetts. Then you've got the mayoral election in Minneapolis, Jacob Frey is running for a third term. 8 years ago, well, actually, how about I go back 12 to tell the story properly? So in 2013, the legendary incumbent mayor, R.T. Ryback, was not running for re-election to a fourth term, even though he would have easily won if he wanted to. So Betsy Hodges, a DFLer, because DFL, Democratic Farmer Labor Party, she was among dozens of people who wanted to run. It was insane how many people contested this seat. This was the second time ever that instant runoff voting was used to decide an election in Minneapolis. They are officially nonpartisan, but they can identify with a political party on the ballot, which kind of makes it pointless. But anyway, 35 candidates announced that they would run to succeed him. Many of them sought the endorsement of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, but none of them got it. So on the first round of the general election, Betsy Hodges was the lead candidate. It took 33 rounds, or 2 days, to decide the outcome, and she won the final round with 48.95% to Mark Andrews' 31.44%. That's when you count exhausted ballots. So ultimately, she did well, but cutting through all that noise was not easy. After all, you have dozens of people. Some never had a chance. Some probably did early on, but at some point you have to understand that in politics or in elections, it's pretty easy for an individual to go from being favored to not, or vice versa. But in terms of when you count only active ballots, Betsy Hodges had a 60.88 to 39.12% landslide. But things didn't go so well, and in the general election of 2017, she was facing off against council member Jacob Frey and a smaller field of candidates, because they did change the rules to make it harder for people to run. So instead of having a $20 filing fee, it was $500 to kind of cull the field. So they had fewer candidates. And in the first rounds of the election, you saw that Hodges was eliminated on the fourth round narrowly, and Jacob Frey was elected mayor by a landslide. It was not particularly close. It just took a couple rounds. Things didn't go so well. COVID, the murder of George Floyd, despite all the racists saying it was just fentanyl or whatever. Hang on just a moment. We're just going to see what's going on here. Anyway, so Frey would run for re-election. In the first round, he led by a large margin. He refused to defund the police and all these other ideas progressives wanted. In the second round, he was elected by a huge margin. Kate Newth went from third to a strong second, but it was always going to be an uphill battle for her. Then in 2025, Jacob Frey is running for re-election. I wonder if any Republicans are backing him just because they do not want Omar. I'm not really exactly sure how to pronounce his name, but he is a front runner along with Jacob Frey. Omar Fateh. He was endorsed by the DFL, but they revoked it. He is a Democratic socialist. He was a state legislator. Well, he is a legislator. But the Republicans have been saying that they've implied that he's a terrorist. They've pretty much gone after him for his name. They've pretty much they've just invoked a lot of racism to attack him rather than his ideas. It just shows desperation. But I think Fry has a healthy chance, but I don't know exactly if he will win. Then in Miami, the Republicans have had this office for some time. You have to go back way back in order to find the last time a Democrat was elected. Um, Manny Diaz. Um, I think he might be the most recent Democrat to have been mayor of Miami, but in 2009, the Republicans, um, or Tomas Regaldo y Valdez, Republican, he would serve 2 terms as mayor of Miami. In 2017, Francis Suarez, I didn't mean to make him sound French. He ran for mayor. He won the first round easily to avoid a runoff. In 2021, he was reelected with 78% of the vote. He ran for president unsuccessfully last year. He cannot run for reelection due to term limits. So far, it looks like it's going to be runoff time in Miami. No candidate got close to a majority, but turnout is pathetic over there. I mean, 21% turnout. That is absolutely an abomination. No one's going to have a mandate from the electorate to do anything there. Then you look at New Orleans, Louisiana. Democrats have controlled this forever and a day. In 2010, former Lieutenant Governor Mitch Landrieu, who was defeated in 2006 when he wanted to be the mayor. He was the lieutenant governor at the time. He was defeated narrowly, running against a controversial incumbent. Then he ran for mayor again and was elected. He he seemed to have the people's pulse. He could understand where people were coming from. In 2014, he was reelected by another landslide. It was closer just because it was more one on one. In 2017, there was a general election to replace him. Ultimately, the Democrats again would win the election, locking out the Republicans in 2021. LaToya Cantrell again was reelected by a huge margin. 2025, we're able to project that Helena Moreno is elected mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana. So the Democrats again prevail there. Mitch Landrieu served in the Biden administration for a little over 2 years. But ultimately, it looks like he's in retirement. With nearly 90% in, Zohran Mamdani's lead is steady. He beat Cuomo. It was closer than I expected, but still, he is doing pretty good. I think when there's more information, they'll be able to see what it looked like in terms of precincts, but 40% of the vote isn't bad for an ex-governor who's also a piece of shit. The Republicans were very racist against Zohran Mamdani rather than just attacking his policies, what he's calling for. They, couldn't help but mention that he is a Muslim and basically tried to blame him for 9/11, which happened when he was, 11 years old. And then they wonder why they get called racist, and they're sick and tired of being called racist, and then they do things that are objectively racist. No other information is ready on the other elections, but I'm willing to predict the Democrats will retain the offices of public advocate and comptroller, borough presidents, except Staten Island, of course, and they will also retain their majority on the city council. Going back to Virginia and New Jersey, Virginia will have New Jersey will have their first ever in modern times male lieutenant governor. So I guess he broke a glass ceiling, which is funny because I'm not actually being serious. So the Constitution of New Jersey was amended in 2005 to allow for the office of lieutenant governor to be created because voters were annoyed that when the governor resigns, the president of the Senate would remain in their job and would take over as acting governor, holding both posts at the same time, the full powers and duties of the office without actually holding it in their own right. So they said, that's not right because, the party switching and power could easily flip at the flick of a wrist, death or resignation. So they said, all right, we're going to bring back the office of lieutenant governor. They won't actually have many powers, but they have to hold a cabinet position. So, except for attorney general, you can be secretary of state or anything else, but you can't be attorney general and lieutenant governor. Anyway, Kim Guadagno was the first woman to be elected lieutenant governor in the modern era of this office being created. Chris Christie defeated incumbent Democratic Governor John Corzine in 2013. It was a Christie slide because he defeated State Senator Barbara Buono. I'm not sure, but he beat her in a landslide. This is the last time a Republican was elected governor of New Jersey. Barbara Buono is the last Democrat ever to get under 1 million votes and not get elected governor. As a result, in 2017, with an extremely unpopular Republican president, former German ambassador to Germany, Phil Murphy, defeated Republican incumbent Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno. In 2021, Governor Murphy and his running mate, Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, were reelected, defeating former state legislator Jack Ciattarelli. It was closer than expected, but he was able to withstand being tied to incredibly unpopular President Joe Biden. 4 years later, Mikey Sherrill is beating Jack Ciattarelli by a healthy margin. Not as big as Murphy's margin in 2017, but better than his 2021 margin. This will make her the first female Democrat and the second female overall to be governor of New Jersey. I think the Democrats will easily retain the legislature, if not pick up a couple seats, because she has decimated him, and I think there's going to be a huge coattail effect. Then we go to the gubernatorial race in Virginia. Abigail Spanberger is crushing Winsome Sears. This margin is pretty solid. She will be the 75th governor and the first woman to be governor. Then we go to the lieutenant governor's race, where the race is a little about the same. They haven't updated it in a while, but Ghazala Hashimi is elected a lieutenant governor of Virginia, so the Democrats will have to have a special election for her seat because it won't be up until 2027. naturally. So they're going to have a special election for her seat, which the Republicans are definitely going to campaign because um, I think the Democrats because the Republicans would have a tied Senate, but with her as lieutenant governor, they won't be able to flip it until at least 2027 to control of the Senate. In the Attorney General's election, uh, Jay Jones is the projected winner. He defeats incumbent Republican Jason Miyares. This is a clean sweep. The Democrats will flip all three posts. Then the question is, how's the House of Delegates doing? So far, they haven't reported anything, but uh, I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win, and I think it's going to, they're going to retain the state house, and I think they'll expand it. So Jay Jones should be thankful that that he won. I think the Democrats are going to tell him to keep his mouth shut for the foreseeable future. I think he's going to be an extremely polarizing person. But I personally think this election, I'm just waiting for when California's polls close because I think it's going to be interesting to see what will win and where. So for those just tuning into this stream, Zohran Mamdani is elected mayor of New York City. Mikey Sherrill is elected governor of New Jersey. Abigail Spanberger is elected governor of Virginia. Her coattails were enough to bring the Democrats control of everything there. So looks like Glenn Youngkin was just a bookmark in between 12, possibly 16 years of Democratic control of the state of Virginia, because the last Republican before him was a bookmark between 16 years of Democrats running the governorship. So likely with the Democrats holding the state house, I'm going to say they will because I think they will. The Democrats are going to have control of everything, so the Republicans there are basically irrelevant. Then there is the redistricting fight in California. Too early to call, but it looks like it's going to pass this redistricting measure because what happened is Texas redrew their districts, and other Republican states are looking to draw Democrats out. So the Democrats said, "Okay, we'll do the same thing." They have plans in New York, Illinois, possibly New Jersey, Virginia, California. I've seen some of those maps, and they're ugly as hell. But they could, if they want to, they could possibly draw all Republicans out. Now, does that mean the Democrats are guaranteed to win the House? No. Even if none of this gerrymandering stuff was happening, I think the country is too polarized to do wave elections anymore. I think when both sides are energized and eager to go to the polls, I think it's going to be close. I think that with regard to why some elections are landslides, depends on who's voting. Sometimes one side is demoralized and unenthusiastic and just doesn't show up. But ultimately, I think either Republicans sat out the election in some states, or the Democrats were just got a lot of undecideds and disaffecteds to vote for them. So I think for now we're just gonna have to wait on results in uh, California, but a lot of mayors are probably going to be reelected. I'm going to see what I can find as to mayoral elections throughout the country. I'm curious about the mayor of Atlanta, if he's going to get reelected. Doesn't seem like he's been too controversial, so he probably will. Andre Dickens. I think he'll win in the first round because typically mayors in Atlanta do. You have to really mess up in order to be defeated for reelection. What was interesting was in 2009, they elected a new mayor, Kasim Reed, to replace Shirley Franklin, who is well respected, and he won the runoff by a close margin. Mary Norwood, who is officially nonpartisan, she is an independent, but they tried to tie her to the Republicans. She supported legalizing gay marriage. The Democrats spent $165,000 to oppose her. So she lost by an extremely close margin, as you can see. She did not run again for 8 years. Reed is reelected by 78 points. Then in 2017, there was an extremely close election where Keisha Lance Bottoms was running, council member. So once again, it was very, very close. In the first round, Norwood had placed first in 2009. In 2017, she and Lance Bottoms got 46% of the vote put together. Then she lost by an extremely close margin. Lance Bottoms did not run for re-election, just like Joe Biden would not 3 years later. Andre Dickens was elected in the runoff in the first round. He was well behind. He almost did not make it to the runoff. Kasim Reed, the former mayor, wanted to come back, but the voters said no. Then Dickens won the runoff by a landslide, and I think he's going to win again. Typically, mayors don't get voted out unless they really screw up. But the Democrats are going to feel good tonight. I think all they have to do is say, "Look, Donald Trump's president. He said things are going to get better. They're not. Give us a chance, and we'll try to succeed where he failed." Then I'm looking towards the midterms next year, and the Republicans have had a majority in governorships for a very, very long time. They've to find the last time the Democrats did not get a majority in governor's races, you'd have to go back quite a ways. Because typically, what's interesting is looking at eras in which one party controlled the White House for a long time, you'll find that a majority of governors came from the opposite party. Under Calvin Coolidge, majority of governors were Democrats. Under FDR, majority of governors were Republicans at one point at least. So in 2006, the Democrats won the majority in governors for the first time in a very, very long time. It was from 1995 to 07 that the Democrats were in the minority, thanks to, Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. President Bush wasn't popular, but he, the Democrats won some close races, won easily in others. In 2007, the Republicans made there was no net gain. The Democrats still had a majority. In 2008, the Democrats won another race, Missouri, to have nearly 60% of governors. This is the last time that in a presidential year, Democrats gained governorships, and the last time that the Democrats held a majority. Well, actually 2009, because the Democrats lost New Jersey and Virginia, which is the last time that both flipped at the same time. In 2010, it was a massacre. So since 2010, the Democrats have held a minority of governorships. The Democrats, it was close, but the cumulative effect was a disaster. In 2011, nothing changed. In 2012, the Democrats lost North Carolina. In 2013, Democrats regained Virginia. 2014, they lost. It was a disaster. They lost more seats. In 2015, there was no net change. 2016, they had a net loss of 2. Then when the West Virginia governor, then a Democrat, switched parties, the Democrats held just 15 governorships. The Republicans 34. There was an independent in Alaska. So there were 34 Republican governors. That was a record since 1921. It is the last time Democrats had governors for West Virginia and Montana. In 2017, New Jersey flipped. In 2018, Democrats gained 7 seats. Republicans lost 6, but they gained an independent seat. That's why they had only a net loss of 6. 6 women were elected for the first time as governor in Maine. So there were female governors elected. Some of these states, this isn't the first time, but Maine, Michigan, Kansas, New Mexico. I'm trying to remember all of them. Then you had South Dakota, Iowa. So, the Democrats did very well in 2018 and 2019. They gained Kentucky, so this was a narrow majority for Republicans. Republicans gained Montana, so the Democrats were not doing so well there. Then they lost another seat. And in 2022, the Democrats had a net gain of 2. Then they lost Louisiana. And then there was no net change. I was honestly surprised New Hampshire didn't flip, but Kamala Harris did that badly, but she still won New Hampshire anyway. Anyway, you see that with Virginia flipping to the Democrats, it was the only state this year up for election that had a Republican governor and had voted for Kamala Harris. So Spanberger will be the first female governor. She will take office on January 17, 2020. 3 days later, Mikey Sherrill will take office as governor of New Jersey. She'll be over there, the second female governor. But, Democrats had a very good night. There was questions of how close would it be. It wasn't that close. Democrats cleaned up compared to 2024. I think Trump, I think the midterms aren't going to be pretty. Depends on how the House is drawn, but I think the Democrats will take the House next year. The Senate, I would be stunned if that happened. I think there'd have to be a depression and Watergate and a new pandemic for that to happen. And I don't think that's going to happen. I knocked on some wood because I do not want to go through that again. Pandemic, all that stuff. I will be right back. So let's see. So Zohran Mamdani has not only won, but it's by a healthy margin. But this is the closest mayoral election since 2009. First time it's been under 10 points. So Mamdani did have a lot of opposition. He did so far manage to win an outright majority, but it doesn't matter. It's first past the post in New York City. I think that if instant runoff voting was for the general election too, I think the results could have been different. Maybe, maybe not. The last time that two candidates for mayor of New York got 1 million votes each was in 1965, when Republican liberal John Lindsay defeated Democratic civil service candidate Abraham Beame. In 1969, Lindsay won again with over 1 million votes. Since then, no one until Mamdani got 1 million votes. So this makes Mamdani one of the most elected people in New York City currently. I don't think he'll quite reach 1.15 million, but I think he'll get close. I'm trying to find what the record could be in terms of most votes ever. 1.5 million in 1957. Currently looking at other elections where to see if there's a higher record than that, but I don't think there is. I think 1957 was a record for anyone in particular. Yeah, I think 1957 is the ultimate record, 1.5 million. So I don't think turnout is going to be enough for him to break that record, but this is easily the one of the stronger showings in New York City history. But then again, Robert F. Wagner Jr., the incumbent, he won. He won his second term in 1957. He won by almost 43 points in New York City. So, that may have been why he won that many votes. Because unless Mamdani had won that kind of margin, he ain't hitting 1.5 million. But Cuomo has conceded defeat. Thankfully, he is not coming back. Well, hopefully, because in 2002 he ran for governor and he dropped out before the general election. Then he ran 8 years later after getting elected attorney general in 2006. He got elected governor, and ultimately he was there for over 10 years. So looking at the numbers, so Mamdani's strength was the fact that he won the popular vote in 4 out of the 5 boroughs. Zohran, but Cuomo helped himself by winning 40% in most of them, except in Brooklyn. He was clobbered there, but he kept it closer in the other boroughs. Queens is a plurality. Brooklyn, 9 points. in the Bronx, 11. Cuomo won heavily in Staten Island by well over 30 points. It was Cuomo country, even though he had never won it in his gubernatorial races. He managed to. Actually, I'm going to fact check my own statement there, but I stand corrected. He won in 2010, 14, and 18. But the Democrats have not won it since then on the governor level. So in his runs for governor and attorney general from 2006 to 2018, he won Staten Island. So this is the first time a non-Democrat and non-Republican, because technically he's running under a third-party banner, has won Staten Island. This marks the first time in a long time that Staten Island voted against a Republican. But the general election, honestly, I like covering elections just because it's fun watching the numbers. Mamdani, I think he's going to have an ugly few years just because he's going to have to fight Donald Trump for most of his term, assuming he runs for re-election and wins. He's going to have a very, very tough time. Abigail Spanberger is absolutely crushing Winsome Sears. Some counties are close, some not so much. In Charlottesville, I'm trying to find Charlottesville. Winsome Sears was defeated by such a massive landslide, and Northern Virginia turned out extremely heavily to make sure that she does not, to make sure that Winsome Sears does not win. This is an absolute flip in this election. 46% of whites, 92% of blacks, 66% Hispanics, 78% of Asians, 46% of men, 81% of 46% of whites, 81% of non-whites voted for Spanberger. 38% of white men, 54% of white women, 87% of black men, 96% of black women, 54% of Latino men, 76% of Latino women voted for her. She won all age demographics. When it's just age, but age by race. Only a few of them went for Sears. So in this case, with Miss Sears, you win some and you lose some. New Jersey governor's race, Mikey Sherrill did very well. This is a very, very closely fought two-person race. She did way better than Phil Murphy margin vote share-wise in 2021, tying with him in 2017. Chitterelli, this is a bad showing for him. Very, very bad. Basically, she outran Kamala Harris in almost, I think, every county. I'd be surprised if she did worse in any county, but the Libertarian candidate, Vic Kaplan, I don't think he cracked 1% of the vote in any county. I don't even think all the third-party votes combined equaled more than 1% in any county. California redistricting, that one, okay. 1.6% of the expected vote is in, and we're able to say that Prop 50 is passed. Basically, there will be a new set of maps drawn in California. I think Republicans are going to get crushed in 2026 because of those maps in California specifically. I think that will determine control of the House unless the Republicans really ramp it up everywhere else. former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, age 78, campaigned against Prop 50. Looks like that will go down in flames, his opposition. So politicians are going to pick the voters rather than the voters picking the politicians in California, just like they are in Texas and other states. Ultimately, the Democrats got their way. So they're using orange to say one side won, and well, that is not going to be tolerated at all. And we're going to fight like hell. It's going to be something else, I'll tell you that much. And, well, the Democrats are going to pay a very steep price. They're going to pay a steep price indeed. So I'm just going to keep the screen on this for a while. So far, it's narrowing up, but I fully expect the Democrats to win heavily here because California voted for Kamala Harris by 20 points, Hillary Clinton by 30, Joe Biden by nearly 30. I would be stunned if the no campaign wins. The Yes campaign has a lead of 460,661 votes out of the 22% of the expected vote. There's an estimated 8.3 million votes left so far. The areas that were expected to vote no are voting no. Parts of the areas that were expected to vote yes are voting yes. San Luis Obispo County is a yes. Santa Clara, yes. Solano, yes. Contra Costa, yes. Sacramento, yes. San Bernardino, yes. Imperial, yes. I would be absolutely floored if somehow, because the Republicans have no power in California. The most they can get is a couple seats in the U.S. House. That's it. There's really nowhere else they have to turn to get any kind of power or influence in politics at the national level. At the state level, they are about as relevant as a third party. Within Virginia, New Jersey, I'm checking again, 94% of the vote is in. The margin is too big for Chitterelli to win, even if you gave him 100% of the remaining vote and all the third-party votes. There's no turning this around. He is a goner. Looking again at New York City, I think he will. I think Mamdani will have a slim majority, but I think he's set to take power in January. So far, it's a nearly 15-point landslide for Spanberger. This was closer than I expected. I expected her to win, but she has curb-stomped Winsome Earl-Sears by a huge margin, and I think it's mainly going to be on the turnout of heavy Democrat turnout and the fact that Winsome Sears in Tazewell County, Virginia, by a margin of over by almost 65 points. I think some counties might. I would be stunned if any county trends to the right of the 2024 election or to the right of the 2021 gubernatorial election. The presidential race, I think every county is voting to the left of that. In Richmond City, Governor-elect Spanberger has won by 73.3%, within Henrico County by almost 39. Chesterfield, like, she's crushing it in the counties where there's a lot of votes to get. Fairfax County, I mean, some of these are small counties, but these huge margins add up. That's just how it is. Zohran Mamdani defeated the very weak and pathetic Andrew Cuomo, who couldn't even finish a third term. I could do a third term just fine. A lot of cognitive incline and recline, but not decline. It's just what it is. Eric Adams, the incumbent mayor, placed fourth with 0.3% of the vote. He dropped out of the race. So I think the vast majority of the votes that went to Sliwa and Adams in 2021, well, Sliwa in 2021 went to Cuomo. Most of those who voted for Adams in 2021 voted for Mamdani in 2025, some for Cuomo. I think the exit poll is going to be interesting to look at just because it's, let's look at the exit poll because Mamdani's huge margin, I think, because even though it's a slim majority, he won half of men and women. He won the white vote by 1 point. He won the black vote by 15 points. He won the Hispanic vote by 7, Asian vote by 28. Amongst whites, he won it by a percent. Non-white, he won it by 15. Looking at other exit poll results, white men went for Cuomo by 5, white women for Mamdani by 4, black men for Mamdani by 27, black women for Mamdani by 8, Latino men for Mamdani by 16, Latino women for Mamdani by 3, all other for Mamdani over Cuomo by 25. 78% of the young, 18 to 29, 30 to 44, 66% for Mamdani. 45 to 64 went for Mamdani. 43 to 40 went for Cuomo. 47 to 43%. With those 65 and over, which is the second largest voting bloc, 56 to 36% for Cuomo over Mamdani. I'm not seeing any demographics so far that gave a majority or plurality to Sliwa. Those that not a high school graduate, or even attended college but received no degree, these groups went for Cuomo over Mamdani 49 to 40, 47 to 39, and 48 to 40%, respectively. Those with an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or advanced degree after a bachelor's degree went for Mamdani over. Let me just say that again. Those with an associate's degree went for Cuomo over Mamdani by 3, 48 to 45. Bachelor's Mamdani over Cuomo, 57 to 37%. Advanced degree after bachelor's degree went for Mamdani over Cuomo, 57 to 37%. So there were some demographics that heavily went for Cuomo. When you look at party affiliation, 65% of Democrats, 59% of the electorate voted 65 to 32% for Mamdani over Cuomo. Republicans, 15% of the electorate voted for Cuomo over Sliwa, 73 to 23%, with 4% voting for Mamdani, which is hilarious and unprincipled. Independents, 26% of the bloc voted for Cuomo over Mamdani, 46 to 43%. This is one of the few demographics in which Sliwa placed second. Those who consider themselves conservative, very liberal, Mamdani over Cuomo, 83 to 15. Somewhat liberal, Mamdani over Cuomo, 69 to 29%. Moderate went for Cuomo, 56 to 35. Somewhat conservative, Cuomo, 71 to 18% over Sliwa. Very conservative, 62 to 29% over Cuomo over Sliwa. I don't think there's a single demographic in this election that was won by that voted in the majority or plurality for Sliwa. Donald Trump has a 26% approval rating in New York City, 70% disapprove. For those who strongly approve of Donald Trump, for those who approve whatsoever, 69 to 21% for Cuomo over Sliwa. Those who disapprove voted for Mamdani, 65 to 32% over Cuomo. Those who voted for who they voted for in 2024, 61 to 25% for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. Mamdani won the Kamala Harris vote, 68 to 30% over Andrew Cuomo. Those who voted for Donald Trump voted 70 to 20% for Cuomo over Sliwa. 69% of the electorate do not consider themselves democratic socialists. They voted for Cuomo over Mamdani, 52 to 38%. Those who said they do, which is 25%, voted for Mamdani over Cuomo, 85 to 13%. Do you consider yourself a part of MAGA? 82% said no, 11% said yes. Those who said no voted for Mamdani over Cuomo, 57 to 39. Those who said yes voted for Cuomo over Sliwa, 62 to 29%. Those who said crime or immigration was their most important, Cuomo won. Cost of living, Mamdani won. Okay, let's see. Where was I? So Mamdani is giving it to he said of Cuomo that he wishes him well, but hopes this is the last time he ever has to hear his name in public. Mamdani's mandate from the electorate is going to be very interesting when you look at these exit polls. Should the next mayor cooperate with the Trump administration on immigration enforcement? Voters 61 to 34% do not. Those who were asked, do you think raising city taxes would do more to hurt or help the city's economy? 60 to 34% said it would hurt the economy, yet they voted for this guy. It's like I want to ask the 29% who voted for Mamdani, why did you vote for him then? Because he will have to raise taxes if he's going to do any of the things he says he wants to do. I think the reason why Cuomo did as well as he did was I think he got a lot of those who said they made up their mind before or before the last week or in the last week. For those who were voting in this election, 68% said it was for their candidate. That vote went 63 to 28% for Zoran Mamdani over Andrew Cuomo. Those who said they voted against his opponents, 71 to 20% for Cuomo over Mamdani. When asked if only Cuomo and Mamdani were running, who would you vote for? The voters said 49 to 44% for Cuomo, for Mamdani over Cuomo. 96% of those who said they would vote for Mamdani in this scenario voted for him. 89% for Cuomo when voting for Cuomo. 50% of the electorate says his ideas are not realistic. Those who asked about Curtis Sliwa, they said his ideas were not realistic by a larger margin. Those who said Cuomo's were realistic, he won that vote heavily. So the one thing I would say is the electorate, it's going to be interesting. What kind of margin or what kind of what are we supposed to take away from it? Because 50% says his ideas are not realistic, a majority, a slim majority. They said that raising taxes, city taxes, will hurt the economy. Yet they voted for this guy. Okay, 4 million votes in. There's 4 million votes remaining, but I think that Prop 50, this is as good as passed. I'm looking at some of these, like in San Francisco, no votes yet, but I think it's very obvious that Prop 50 will pass by a landslide. Looking at the numbers, I think that Cuomo did it as good as he was going to do. I think this was much better than I expected. I thought he was going to be in the low 30s, but he held Mamdani to a plurality in Queens, held low 40s in Queens and the Bronx. In Brooklyn, he got clobbered. In Manhattan, that was actually his strongest borough that he did not win. But then he won Staten Island by a landslide. I think even if you had given every last Sliwa vote, it would be 48.7 to 50.4%. I think if that were the case, they wouldn't have called the election. I think it would have been like too close to call. But at this point, 90% of the vote is in. Even if every non-Mamdani vote went for Cuomo, Cuomo would still be losing. I don't think there is enough votes to push Mamdani under a majority for them to be like, well, it was a spoiler effect. Going into the Virginia governor's race to voted for Donald Trump, or nearly everyone who did, are voting no. Those who voted for Kamala Harris are voting yes. I think those who voted a third party are voting yes, or maybe they might vote no. Personally, I think we could avoid all this talk of gerrymandering if we just imposed proportional representation in every state and let the voters set the party list. So it's a 15-point landslide for Spanberger. She is just absolutely decimating. It's honestly, it's really satisfying watching MAGA simps get crushed in elections. For those who voted, 57% of the vote on election day in Virginia was election day, 33% early, 9% early by mail. So Spanberger, I think, will carry her party over the line in several other races. In the race for lieutenant governor, Ghazala Hashimi is winning that race, 55 to 44%. She did very good in her own right. She did very well in her own right. I think she and Spanberger are going to be pretty good governing partners. In the attorney general's race, I think the controversy over the text messages died off really quickly. Ultimately, he won heavily amongst women, lost heavily amongst men. I think this will be the closest statewide race in Virginia this year. It was a 6.2% margin. Jones won by a healthy margin. You look at the various counties. There was a lot of people split ticket voting Democrat for governor and lieutenant governor and Republican for attorney general. The exit poll, um, he won. Jones lost heavily amongst whites, won heavily amongst blacks, Hispanics, Asians. Looking at the rest of the results, you look and you see white men heavily opposed him, white women narrowly opposed him, black men and women voted for him, Latino men voted against him, Latina women voted for him. Trying to find the one about the text messages because that's going to be interesting and telling, really. Those who called themselves Democrats, 35%, voted 95 to 5% for Jones. Republicans, 33%, voted. They voted 96 to 4% for Maieres. Independents, 1/3 of the electorate, voted 51 to 48% for Jones. Those who consider themselves liberal, 90 to 9% for Jones. Moderates, 60 to 39% for Jones. Conservatives, the largest bloc in Virginia, 92 to 8% for Maieres. Those who said their relative, they or someone in their house was an employee of the federal government. Those who said currently yes, 57 to 42% for Jones. Those yes, but not now. Not enough data. No, 78%, 50 to 49%. So I think it's that chunk of the electorate. Yes, currently, I think is what decided it in this particular race. I think this is a rebuke of Trump, Doge, Elon Musk. I think it's going to be very telling as to what the Virginia Republicans, Maryland Republicans, Delaware Republicans, Republicans in the nearby area are going to do, because they're going to be punished for Doge cuts. Whether the Doge project was a good idea or not, I think if I were a Democrat running, I would tie every Republican to Elon Musk. 57% of Virginia voters disapprove of President Trump. 87% voted for Jones. Those who approve, 41%, voted 97 to 2% for Maieres. Those that voted for Kamala Harris voted overwhelmingly for Jones. Those who voted for Trump voted overwhelmingly for Maieres. Those who voted third party voted for Maieres. Virtually all MAGA Republicans voted for Jones. Those non-MAGA Republicans voted for Maieres, and MAGA Republicans for Maieres, sorry. Those who do not consider themselves MAGA voted overwhelmingly for Jones. Those who say they are voted overwhelmingly for Maieres. Majority of Virginia voters say that trans rights and immigration enforcement by Trump are going too far. Voters approve of Glenn Youngkin, 52 to 42%. But they have a 52 to 44% unfavorable view of Winsome Earl Sears and a 52 to 45% favorable view of Abigail Spanberger. 43% of voters said it was disqualifying about the text messages. 26% said concerning but not disqualifying. 10% said not a reason for concern. But yeah, that's, I think, a very, very telling sign that the Democrats and Republicans, now you can say whatever you want and the voters will likely not punish you, depending on the political climate in which you're running in. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer congratulated but never endorsed Mamdani and refused to say who he voted for. Congratulated Mamdani. Obama congratulated candidates. Chitterelli's links to Trump worked against him clearly. I don't think there was any way possible that he was going to win when Trump was so unpopular. Nearly 60% of the vote is in. Prop 50 is passed 64.4 to 35.6%. The margin will vary over time. It will stretch. It'll contract. It's clear that this election in California was a backlash. I think for a lot of people, they don't like Democrats, but goddamn the Republicans. That is basically what can be taken away. Now, in some areas, they were actually enthusiastic for the Democrats, believe it or not. But in many ways, this was just an anti-Trump backlash. But turnout may have been low in some areas, so it's hard to, it will take until all the votes counted, and we'll find out exactly what the final tally is and what turnout is. If turnout's high, yeah, it's a rebuke of Trump. If it's low, then it was just Democrats were really chomping at the bit to vote. So, by the way, I need to track my ballot because my ballot was counted. That's good. Currently looking at the election results in my home state. I forgot how many cities are up for election this year in Utah. Okay, looking at a lot of these incumbents or some of these seats are uncontested. So Marcia White, my incumbent city council member, is trailing. This is an at-large seat. She is behind by a little over 1,000 votes. Bart Blair, Marcia White is the incumbent Democrat for at-large seat A. For at-large seat B, the incumbent Bart Blair is down. I think it's fair to say he lost re-election. So that's funny. An incumbent Democrat and incumbent Republican lose on the same ballot, probably to opposition party candidates, even though these races are officially nonpartisan. Ken Ritchie is probably going to be reelected, albeit it's a close race for District 3. Looking at the vote, North Ogden City Council, you vote for two people, so looks like J.D. Dalpius and Tara Carney are the top two. North Ogden City Mayor Ryan Barker is ahead by 20 points over Phil Swanson. Marriott Slaterville City Mayor, 2/3 majority for Les Syme. Huntsville Town Council at large, voting for two. Sandy Hunter and James Truitt are the top two. Hupper City Council, only two candidates, so you only get to vote for one. Ray Hancock. That's strange. 63.1 to 36.9%. Let me switch back to the congressional results in California. So it looks like Marshall White lost 55 to 45%. But Republican Bart Blair, 59 to 40%. He lost. I'm just on Jay Jones won, period, but the fact he won by that much, 53 to 47, is a surprise to me. I think this is the most votes ever won by a governor candidate in Virginia, period. Mike Cheryl. I'm just stunned that Cuomo got 40%. I think a lot of those were voting for Sliwa just because the parties and Republicans, they vote for Cuomo to stop him. Didn't matter. Mamdani got a majority anyway. It's a narrow majority, but it's a clear lead. Even if you gave every vote, Sliwa vote to Cuomo, you only get 48%. Ooh, the Virginia Lieutenant Governor candidate won a landslide of her own. So I think that carried the Attorney General candidate over why Democrats will retain the state House in Virginia. So Democrats have total power in Virginia. So now Virginia, only 17 states have never had a female governor. Only had one. Well, we heard one did elect. Arizona's had 5 governors. So yeah. Okay, I am back. Okay. Let me see. 64.6 to 35.4%. This was a huge landslide for So about 2 million votes are left in the California election here. In order for the no campaign to somehow win, which they won't, you'd have to have virtually all of the remaining vote go for the no campaign, not only to close that almost 2 million vote gap. No, it's 2 million votes to close it, and then have enough of a margin to sustain whatever would be going to the yes side. So for all intents and purposes, this is just mathematically impossible because a swing like that is just improbable. I love how all the MAGAs who are saying that Mamdani is an anti-Semite, and they're being hypocrites where it's like anti-Semitism obviously has no place in society. Obviously, that should be a no-duh statement. But then you got MAGAs who are like, well, let's just be Islamophobic in retaliation. It's like utter hypocrites. So Mamdani has a near 200,000 vote lead. I'm going to switch to New York City again. Cuomo, 55 to 23% first in Staten Island over Mamdani. Sliwa was nearly in second. This was actually where most of the votes went. Because he got a ton of votes in Queens, but the lion's share outside of that was Staten Island. So he did best in Staten Island and Queens. Everywhere else, he was a non-factor. Mamdani only won a plurality in Queens. He won majorities in Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island. 48 years ago, Mario Cuomo, father of Andrew and Christopher Cuomo, he ran for mayor, lost the Democratic primary, re-entered as the Liberal candidate, and lost by, honestly, not that different of a margin. So 48 years later, we've come full circle in the Cuomo political dynasty. Yeah, I mean, they called Mamdani a terrorist and said all this nonsense about how he's somehow to blame for 9/11. It's like, what did these assholes think was going to happen when they'd speak about somebody like that? So I think the Democrats, it's going to be a battle between progressives, moderates, liberals for control of the party. Kamala Harris had she won, it would have papered over that rot. I think the Democrats got to figure something out. If they're going to be moderates, embrace it. Otherwise, or progressives. But I think it would be better if the Democrats dissolved and just have anything but Republican type campaigns where who can beat the Republican. But we need to change the electoral system. Nancy Pelosi, the former House Speaker, will not run for re-election. Thank God. Um, Okay, I am back. Let me take a look. So the margin hasn't really changed. It's still a little over 2 million. Um, I'm just wondering what the final spread is going to be. I think it's going to be rather stagnant that way. Um, Switching over to the mayoral election, only 200,000 votes remain. So, I mean, if you're a Coper, you probably would be like, oh, well, there's still so, theoretically enough votes to put Cuomo on top. But, Cuomo is done. He lost, and good fucking riddance. He was a terrible governor, a terrible person. Um, about 91% of the vote is in, and Cuomo, he did pretty well for a losing candidate. Typically, when you lose as a candidate, you lose bad. The last election in New York City in which the loser actually did fairly decently was in 2009 when Democratic comptroller Bill Thompson got 500,000 votes against Michael Bloomberg, the incumbent mayor, an independent former Republican who is now a Democrat, who got 585,000 votes or 50.7% of the spread. Thompson got 46.3% for 534,000 votes. Um, Turnout was at just 28%. Only about 1 million people bothered to vote. Uh, in 2013, turnout plummeted further. The losing candidate, Joe Lhota, 264,000 to winner Bill de Blasio, 795,000. 2017, Nicole Maliotakis, 316,000, 27%. Bill de Blasio, 66%, 760,000. In 2021, Curtis Sliwa, 27.8%, 312,000. Eric Adams, 753,801 votes, 66.99% of the spread. So, I mean, this was a really good showing for Mamdani. Democratic Socialists, I think, are going to try to make 2026 a referendum on their ideas. But if we're comparing his showings versus Adams' showing in 2021, Mamdani ran 16.59% behind Adams. I think a ton of people who did not vote for him in 2021. My sister's sick in the bathroom. Majority of those who voted Sliwa this last time voted Cuomo this time. I think a number of those who voted Adams in 2021 voted Cuomo in 2025. So I think this is a very interesting showing that a Cuomo, the fight and deliver candidate, ultimately he put up a good fight. He was never going to win this thing once he lost the primary. He went into the general election not favored to win. He did not come close, really. But the fact it's under 10% is actually not that bad of a showing. He's a piece of shit, but he did better than expected. Oh, and I forgot to mention, former Vice President Dick Cheney died, and may he rest in piss. Sadly, he didn't take George W. Bush and Dan Quayle with him. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think anyone's going to be in the live chat doing anything. And given that I've gone over all the results, well, actually, let me check Atlanta. Let's see about Atlanta, because I already talked about my hometown's results. I'm going to look at Atlanta. And I might make a post-mortem election afterwards within a few days. Andre Dickens, the incumbent mayor, who is 51 years old, is reelected in a landslide. 58% reporting. He has 85% of the vote. He has a heavy mandate from the electorate to continue what he's doing in office. Whether you think it's great or not depends who you ask. 2025 in Boston. Michelle Wu, the incumbent, 44% reporting, 91% of the vote. Then you look at the so Michelle Wu has a mandate from the electorate, a very powerful mandate. She has won the election with a massive landslide, but then again, her main opponent had dropped out, and she has weathered controversies rather well. Let's see, 2025 Minneapolis mayoral election. It is going to an instant runoff. Incumbent Mayor Jacob Frey and State Senator Omar Fateh, 48.1% to 31.7%, 10.1% lead. I think Frey is going to win, barring any massive upset with the ranked choice voting. He's running for Fry is running for a third term, final term. but I just don't see how he can lose, because that's a pretty strong starting point on the first round. The polls indicated all along it was going to be a Fry matchup. The Republicans have no influence. I think it's going to be moderate Democrats versus the left in these contests. And then I'm going to look at St. Paul. Melvin Carter III was first elected in 2017. Sorry about that. With 50.9% of the vote. Looks like that was a first round victory. In 2017, in 2021, he was reelected with 61% of the vote on the first try. So far, no results out of St. Paul, but the Democrats are feeling giddy because they did better in Virginia in 2025 than they did in 2017, the last time they won a governor's race. 2017. In New Jersey, they did worse than 2017, but better than 2021. New York City, on the one hand, Mamdani won an outright majority, and thus there was no tactical voting that could have made a difference. Although you can tell at the end, a lot of Republicans did vote for Cuomo to try to stop Mamdani. Mamdani ran well behind. I mean, there were a lot of Democrats who defected to Cuomo in the end. I mean, it's obvious that not only were there people who didn't vote normally in mayoral elections that turned out to vote for Cuomo or Mamdani, there were those who didn't want Mamdani. So half the city is opposed to him. The majority of the voters are just glad that Cuomo's done. Even if everyone who voted Sliwa, if that was a vote for Mamdani, then 57.5% of the electorate voted for him, for Mamdani. Even if you gave every last Sliwa vote to Cuomo, it's 50.4% to 48.7%. Eric Adams, in the end, after dropping out, he still got 6,382 votes, or 0.3%, for fourth place. Write-ins combined are at 0.3%. Jim Walden, who demanded that everyone back the top non-Mamdani candidate, got 2,170 votes despite dropping out. That's, to me, hilarious that Adams somehow thought that running for re-election as an independent was going to make a difference. I think if he had run for re-election as a Democrat, I think Cuomo could have gotten the nomination. Polls got it wrong ultimately because Mamdani got the nomination, but I think he could have been like, it's me or Adams. But who knows? Maybe Mamdani would have beaten them both. I don't know. Mamdani's worst performance in the city, besides Staten Island with 23% of the vote, was Queens, where he got just 47%. Sliwa did the best in Queens and Staten Island. Cuomo did the best in Staten Island, and he did the worst in Brooklyn with just 37% of the vote. Hopefully, this is the last time we ever have to hear about Andrew Mark Cuomo. Looking at other races in the country, we're going to look at a special election in Texas. It is a deep blue district. It is going to a runoff, likely going to a runoff between Christian Menefee and Amanda Edwards, 31.6% and 25.5%. Jolanda Jones places third with 18.4%. Ultimately, this is due to the death of Sylvester Turner. the former mayor of Houston. So ultimately, this general election of 2025 is incredibly interesting. So now it's going to be two Democrats. Which one is going to the United States House of Representatives? Um, besides the Virginia governor's race, the lieutenant governor's race was also a landslide. Ghazala Hashimi, it was unclear if she could pull it through. She did. She beat her Republican opponent, John Reed, who is openly gay, by a huge margin in her own right. Jay Jones, who everyone wrote off as dead politically, defeated the incumbent Attorney General, Jason Miyares. He was the only Republican incumbent running for re-election statewide in 2025 in Virginia. He lost by quite some margin. Turnout, I think, was pretty high. I think every election in the United States is increasingly nationalized. So I think you're going to see a ton of people who are turning out to vote to make it a rebuke of the President of the United States, no matter who it is. The parental in Texas, I forgot to mention, the Parental Rights Amendment passed 71.3 to 28.7%. But turnout is low because ultimately I'm not going to try to guess the percentage, but it's nowhere near the turnout of the presidential contest. Every county except Travis voted for the amendment. Travis County, Texas, 58.2 to 41.8% voted no. Requires citizenship to vote passed, sweeping all but Travis County, which voted 56.3 to 43.7% against. 73.7 to 26.3% statewide voted for it. So that's the end of the Texas amendments. The Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, all three incumbents are Democrats running for retention. 94% of the vote in. Kevin Doherty was re-elected 61.3 to 38.7%. I'm not really sure the exact pronunciation. Christine Donahue, 61.2 to 38.8%, retained, just like Doherty, who has that exact same margin right now. David Wecht, 60.9 to 39.1%, retained. So the Democrats will retain their majority on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Another rebuke of Donald Trump. Main ballot measures, let's see. Absentee voting and voter ID restrictions rejected 63.4 to 36.6%. Temporary restrictions on dangerous weapons passed 62.7 to 37.3%. So they basically passed red flag laws in Maine and rejected voter ID on the same ballot. In the state of Colorado, raising taxes for school meals passed 57.6 to 42.4%. Pretty much almost all the areas that voted for Kamala Harris in Colorado passed. Those for Trump rejected it, but there are some Trump counties that voted for it. So I think you can say there are people who might not vote the same way their presidential candidate they voted for would have voted. Then Prop 50 was the only thing on the ballot in California, so I'm going to see what has happened in Jersey City, New Jersey, because I am truly curious as to what's going to happen, just because you had a governor who resigned from power because he was gay and had an affair. It looks like he and James Solomon is a city council member, are going to a runoff. I am trying to find the live results, but the fact he's going to a runoff says there are a lot of people who don't care anymore that he was once. So it looks like between James McGreevey and Andrew Cuomo, McGreevey might make a political comeback. He's been out of power 20 years. Cuomo has been out of power just 4. So McGreevey led in the polls 23 to 20%. Solomon was at 20%. Okay, so Bill O'Dea, nonpartisan. All right, I'm going to read the results from the top. James Solomon, nonpartisan, 29%. Jim McGreevey, nonpartisan, 25.4%. Bill O'Dea, nonpartisan, 21.5%. Musab Ali, nonpartisan, 18.3%. Joyce Waterman, 3.9%. Is going to prevail in the general election runoff, but McGreevey, the fact he made it to second to the runoff, I would not count him out just for the sake of not being humiliated, because if I were his opponent, I would say, look, he resigned, and look, there's nothing wrong with him being gay, but the fact that he couldn't keep his personal life, he couldn't be ethical to his wife, he couldn't come out to her and say, look, things have changed clearly, and then file for divorce. He couldn't be faithful to her, so how is he going to be faithful to the electorate? Like, there is nothing wrong with the fact he's gay, of course not, but I think a golf Twitter says we knew it was going to be a ROTFL stomp when the White House came out and said today's election is not a referendum on Donald Trump. After they said those words, we knew it would be a win for blue. I don't know who a golf Twitter is, but I can take a guess as to how he leans politically. If you want to join the stream, I'm willing to have you on. We can talk about the election results, because I was going to wrap this up, but if you want to talk about the election results, I can send you the link if you've got Twitter, or because the thing that intrigues me about this contest, okay, let me see. Agolf Twitler says Democrats flipped 13 seats in the Virginia House. The Democrats already had the State House and the Senate. The Senate's not up until 2027, which I think it should be up every 2 years like the House. But anyway, Virginia Democrats are going to have a super majority in the House. If Spanberger does well, they could pad the Senate, but that's going to depend on how she governs. Agolf Twitler also points out the Democrats swept the mayoralty in New York City, lieutenant governor, AG governor, and in New Jersey. It was a bloodbath. Republicans had a bad night. Normally, local elections, there's low turnout, and Republicans are better at turning out to vote. So the fact they did this poorly shows that Democrats have been, since the 2024 general election, have been chomping at the bit every off-year election to go out and vote, to punish Donald Trump and his Republican Party. I think the fact is, no matter how you slice it, the backlash is coming. To what extent this is going to be, who knows? But I think the big thing, the big takeaway is, for months, the electorate has felt powerless against a president who has made it clear he does not care whether he has their support or not. Does not matter. He does not see them as mattering to him. If you didn't vote for him, he doesn't care about you. I am a right libertarian. I did not vote for Donald Trump. I knew he was going to be a failure as president. And I've told everyone who voted for him, you voted for this nonsense. Cost of living is getting worse. and he's focused on tearing down parts of the White House. Housing is in crisis, and he focuses on when people insult him. He doesn't give a shit about you. All he wanted was the White House. He didn't care about your house, kind of thing. And that's what makes me laugh, is these idiots who thought that he actually understood what they go through. I mean, you'd have to be a special kind of stupid to think that he ever was serious about tackling the cost of living. If you're a politician in 2025 and you want to get elected, the cost of living crisis, housing, crime, infrastructure, reasonable environmentalism is a pretty good way to go in order to get elected. So at this point, I think the next general election, 2026, I'm already chomping at the bit to cover the primary elections, just because it's going to be a real question. Who is going to be the big name of that election? Mamdani is the big name of 2025. Cheryl is the third. Spanberger the second. I don't think Adolf Twitler is around in the chat anymore, but if he still is, if you do want to talk about the election live, if you want to be on the stream, if you have an email or whatever, you can absolutely. I could send you the link, or if you have Twitter, I could send you the link. Either way, I don't mind hearing other people's thoughts on this. I think that but in my hometown, there was a bit of a controversy. One of the candidates was talking to a very racist Christian nationalist pastor who called for executing rebellious black teenagers, and I'm putting that in quotes. And then the Weber County GOP and GOP-aligned groups endorsed and financially supported several candidates. All the candidates gave the money back because it was violating city-wide election laws. One was a Democrat, the others were Republicans. That Democrat and one of the Republicans have lost. The candidate who was tied to the racist pastor was crushed. I'm just wondering what the next council term will look like, in terms of, you have two incumbents that were defeated. You have three new council members, possibly four, if Heath Sato beats Ken Ritchie. I'm indifferent about the Ken Ritchie-Heath Sato election, because both of them, I think, are competent, capable men. I'm going to look at the results were last updated at 9:39, so let me see. So it looks like the numbers have not changed. Heath Sato is behind by 175 votes. Jace Reineveld, who is tied to the pastor, he is behind by 264 votes, but that's for a council seat, a district, not an at-large contest. So that means he's behind by 18.2%. Council District 3, Ken Ritchie, he's at District 3, he's ahead by 175. Then we go at-large seat B. Bart Blair is behind by 1,747 votes, 59.3 to 40.7%. Alicia Washington defeated Marsha White, 55.4 to 44.6%, or by a margin of 1,005 votes. But this general election was intense in my mind, just because they don't do polling in local elections most of the time, unless it gets unusually large amounts of national attention. Oh yeah, I forgot I'm still live. Currently just trying to find other election results worth talking about and just seeing where that takes us all. But so far I'm not finding anything. So, I mean, if you guys want me to mention an result you think is interesting, I'm more than willing to hear it. So let's see what else is going on currently. Well, oh no. Well, goddamn autocorrect. Anyway, um, since no one has accepted the offer of joining the stream, whether via link, and no one has talked in the chat for a while, I guess I'm just gonna wrap it up because I don't really have anything else I want to say. So only 3 messages were left, and I guess Winsome Sears. Let's hear her concession speech. I know this is just from my phone.
Winsome Earl Sears has admitted defeat to Abigail Spanberger. The race was called early in the night, about an hour after the polls closed. Earl Sears spoke at about 9:30.
I have to tell you, I think I learn more in a loss than I ever do in a victory. I think there's something about that. And it builds you. It's either going to tear you apart or it's going to build you. Well, I don't tear apart. I have God. I don't tear apart.
She came out and thanked her supporters, her family, and several others. She talked about the fact that she is an immigrant to this country from Jamaica and reflected on her accomplishments, including becoming lieutenant governor. She said she...
Well, it looks like that's that then. Anyway, I will see you guys later. Have a good night. And eventually, I will talk about, well, to that one viewer who oh, never mind, they left. Anyway, you guys have a good night. I'll talk to you later on, and good luck.